Okay, and with that, we
I have to
are
say, got it. Okay. Sorry.
live. Fantastic. Okay, great. Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you, Clinton.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Quentin Stuckey, otherwise known as Stux, and welcome to a very long-awaited episode of my YouTube podcast, Novel Conversations. And today I have a very special guest with me. Could you tell us your name and a bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jessica Freeman. I'm a 40-year-old copy editor, and I live outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have a husband named Ian, and we've been married for almost 15 years. It'll be next month, 15 years. And we have two children. Amelia, my daughter, is 11 years old. My son Logan is 7 years old, and we have two cats named Gem and Ash.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. So
Sure.
part of the reason that you're here is you and I have been in contact for the past little while. I think we first got in contact, oh my goodness, at the beginning of was it the beginning of the year? I don't even
Yeah,
can't even
I
recall
think
now.
so. I
Yeah,
think
it
I
was
messaged you because I was like, you're doing a master's thesis about Bo. I need to talk about this with you.
yes, that's right. That's right. So we met that way, which is great. That's one of the things that's really unique about the Bo Burnham fan base, especially in response to Inside, is just how all of us responded to the work in some way or another, and we all get together and
Absolutely.
share our love of it and talk about how much it resonated with us and so forth. So it's great, and I find that people, and this absolutely includes you, in the Bo Burnham subreddit, the fan base, are really really nice, really kind people.
Yeah.
I've been on other subreddits for other celebrities or television shows or films, and sometimes people aren't always very kind or very forgiving, and if you express sort of maybe a negative viewpoint or alternative viewpoint. But I always find that people are very warm and welcoming. That both fans are very, very warm and welcoming people. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was
I
great.
agree with that.
Yeah, it was great
Definitely.
to meet you. And can you tell us a bit about Stand Up Comedy Historian, which is the website that you run and that we had an interview. You had an interview with me on Stand Up Comedy Historian to talk about
Yes.
my Bo Burnham scholarship. Could you tell us a bit about the genesis of that?
Sure. Should I start with what it was initially
Yeah,
or
absolutely. Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
So what it started with is that I know that Twitter's like dying now, but at the time in 2021, it was still booming. And I wanted to share with more people something that I had found, which was that there are a number of instances where Bo is sort of repurposing his clothing from before the
Mm,
pandemic for inside. So I found all these pictures um, of Bo wearing clothes, and then it's just sort of fun for people to see, like, the regular Bo
hmm.
versus inside Bo.
That's right.
And it got a pretty big response from me. Usually my tweets would get 1 to 2 likes, and this got 100. So
Oh,
I was like, oh, this is something that I could, if this is something people are interested in, I could do more of. So I added more about his hoodie. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but he has it on all the time, and there's
hmm.
tons of pictures of him in it. So I
Yeah.
just sort of threw those all together, and that did really well. And then I just sort of went from there, and I create these deep dive threads on Twitter, just on my private account. But my husband, it wasn't just my husband. I felt that I was just putting way too much Bo stuff on my private account, and it
Mhm.
was just weird to have all that stuff and then like pictures of my kids. So I decided to create a fan account, and I created the Bo Burnham Historian fan account in March of 2022. And from there, I was like interacting with people as sort of this authority figure on Bo, sort of like a persona I took on. I would say that I'm not a historian. I know that's my title, but that is something that a friend sort of gave me. I had posted a deep dive thread about Bo's glasses, like sunglasses and glasses and inside. And
Mhm.
she said Beau Historian. And I was like, oh, I love that title. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I sort of just like adopted it. And then after that, I just sort of built up this fan base basically on Twitter. By the time I deleted the account entirely, by the end of the year, I had 700 followers, which was the most I've ever had of anything.
Mhm.
And I one of the things I wanted to do was to analyze Inside because it was just so incredible to me. I'd been a fan of Beau since 8th grade.
Mhm.
That was the first thing that I really saw how brilliant he is. Because before that, I had seen him in a couple clips of things. I saw uh, Kroll show is Nick Kroll is like one of my favorite comedians, so I've like followed him since probably like Best Week Ever.
Mhm.
And so Nick Kroll had this show called Kroll Show on Comedy Central, and Beau played a character named Diz, and I thought that he was just a British comedian. I didn't realize that he was doing an accent. So then in 2017, I saw The Big Sick, which Beau has a role in, and I
Mhm.
thought his character was gay. I don't know why I thought this, but that I have really bad gaydar, so that's possibly why. And then in 2018, I saw a Wisecrack YouTube video about the philosophy of Bo Burnham
Mhm.
because I kept hearing about Bo and I was like, what? Who is this guy? Like, why are people so interested in him? Like, why are people devoted to him? Like, I would see it was almost like a cult,
Mhm.
and I can completely understand that now, but at the time I was just confused by it. And so I watched that video, but even after that, I wasn't like a huge fan. I was like, oh yeah, he seems pretty cool.
Mhm.
But it wasn't like until I saw 8th grade and I was just like, my God, this guy, this man has captured my middle school experience perfectly. I was the quiet, kid in class who didn't talk to anyone and very shy. I didn't have many friends. I had pretty much one friend
Mhm.
all of my time in middle school and high school. Um, and it was just such an incredible film that after that, I was like, I have to find out more about this man's mind. Like, how can someone create this
Yeah.
amazing film? Like, he wrote and directed it. It's like his
Mhm.
baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I watched that. I think it was like that weekend or whatever. I watched Make Happy, and I was just blown away. I was like,
Mhm.
I've never seen a comedy special like this. I've watched lots of comedy specials, and
Yeah.
it was thrilling to me. And it was like pure art, especially like in Can't Handle This when he has the lights
Oh
come down
yeah.
on him. I was like, I remember watching with like my mouth open. I was like, what is this?
Mhm. It's
So
definitely
after
one of the
that
best
was,
I've seen too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's my favorite comedy special. I don't necessarily consider Inside a comedy special. I consider it more of
Mm-mm.
like a film,
Yeah, me
but
too.
yeah. But like Make Happy, after that, I was like, I have to find everything this man has done. So then I watched What, and I loved that. And then I started like, I had to buy Words from Amazon because it wasn't
Mhm.
available anywhere at the time. And I had to buy Zach Stone is going to be famous.
Mhm.
And then I bought Egghead, and I got the audiobook version of that as well, which is amazing. If people haven't listened to it, it's basically like another Bo Burnham comedy special.
But the
It's
audio
well worth
version.
it to
Yeah.
listen to. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
fun. He does a lot of like intonation and like just voices and stuff. It's really
Yeah.
entertaining. Um, so from there, I just became obsessed with Bo. I wanted to read every interview and just like learn everything about him. And I joined Reddit in 2019 in June because I had read this interview where Bo said that he had ripped off the Flight of the Conchords in one of his early songs. And I was like, I love Flight of the Conchords. I was
Mhm.
obsessed with them. I know that I keep saying I'm obsessed with everything, but it's true. I have lots
Yeah.
of hyperfixations, and especially about comedy. And yeah, like Brett and Jermaine are two of my favorite, comedians. So I was like, what's he referring to? I could come up with a couple things, but I wanted other people's opinions, and my husband was not playing this game with me. He's like, I don't know, I don't care. So
My girlfriend can be the same way. Like, she can be like, I'm glad that you care so much.
yeah,
I personally am not that interested, but I
yeah.
care that you care.
No, that's basically his approach. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, Bo's funny. I like pandering, but I don't get his whole thing. Why are you obsessed with this? I'm like, I don't know. There's something about that just
It speaks to you.
it speaks to me. It does. I
Yeah,
think part of it is that Bo talks about anxiety so much, and
yeah,
that's something that I've struggled with. So I feel like he and I have just similar minds, and I think that it's just nice hearing other people
totally.
expressing things that I've also felt. I also think I know you did a video about hypersensitive. Sorry, hypersensitive.
High
High,
sensitivity?
high
Yeah,
sensitivity. Yes,
yeah.
I do think that Bo's an HSP. I
Yeah,
really.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah. Especially I think also considering I think his approach to his public life and his fame, I think is very much really like screams sort of HSP to me because I could imagine as someone who's also highly sensitive, I could imagine having a similar sort of
Mhm.
wanting to have a similar sort of treatment of like I engage with the world when I have something to present, and otherwise, like I don't need to. I'm sure you heard that one interview he did with it wasn't happy, sad, confused, or was it happy, sad,
Yeah,
confused,
yeah,
and
yeah. Happy, sad,
yeah,
confused. That was
it was like
great when he
it
was
was
already working on Inside
he was
at
working
that
yeah he
time.
was working on inside, and he said something along the lines of, I think we need to pay attention to our cultural emissions, and it's hard to be additive when there's already a lot of noise. So I think in some ways that people can be additive is by withdrawing from the noise, and
Yeah.
so, and I really respect that about him, because especially post inside, like I can only imagine the amount of like pressure he would have gotten to go on talk shows and
Oh, of course.
podcasts,
Of
like,
course.
yeah,
But yeah, he has never done an interview about Inside at all.
not at all. He's
Nothing.
never, the
No
only time he's
press.
like, nothing. The only time he's ever really acknowledged it has been social media. So he does it on his own terms. And I think
Right.
he's
And then he
obviously now at a
also
place.
he did a thing with the New York Times, which was so bizarre. Like he was completely MIA for months after the Emmys. And then all of a sudden, a photo shoot with the New York Times where
Oh,
he's
I
half
think I did see that.
naked. It was like,
Yeah.
what? This
Yeah.
is what you decided to do? But yeah, no, that
Yeah.
was
I
awesome.
think he likes to fuck with his fans. And I also like,
Oh
I
my
like
God,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a real love-hate relationship with his
He
fans.
does. He really does. And like, even and you can it's so funny just seeing his well, it's not well, it's funny, but it's also very, because I told this to you in the interview that you did with
Mhm.
me about how I saw a few of his YouTube videos, had similar feelings. I'm like, oh, he's funny, that's funny, like he's playing piano, he's got clever lyrics, and they're kind of, especially in his early YouTube stuff, I'm like, oh, they're kind of, a bit out there and a bit raunchy.
Yeah.
um but
Which
it didn't
I
really.
never minded. I just want to say, I know that there are people who are like, Bo's
Yes.
racist, Bo's homophobic. I grew up on that stuff, so it doesn't like bother me as much. I love
Yeah.
South Park. I watched Family Guy. I didn't love Family Guy, but I watched it. I'd watch
Yeah.
any cartoon basically when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect me the way that I think the younger generation gets upset about that type of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No,
I just take it
absolutely.
as, oh, it's just
It's of its time. Yeah. At the end
it's
of the
of
day,
its
it's of
time.
its time. It is.
It
There's
is.
that. What, and I find that even watching any comedy film from like the early to mid
Oh my
2000s, and it's
God.
like,
Watch
oh
a
my
watch a Judd
goodness.
Apatow movie now. It's like,
Oh
look at
man.
Knocked Up. I watched Knocked
Knocked
Up
up.
recently. I was like, Jesus Christ, this has like the F slur and oh my God.
Yeah.
It is wow.
Yeah. It's yeah. But I like never thought that much of him, probably until I was definitely aware that he was still making comedy specials. I think I saw a few clips of what I didn't see anything of Make Happy. He was completely off my
Mm.
radar by that point, by
No, I didn't.
2016.
I
Yeah,
never knew
and
about that
then
either.
Inside came along and it just totally blew me away. It was like,
Yeah.
what did I just watch? What was that? Like I'd
So
never
when
seen
did you
anything like
watch
that before.
Inside? Like, did you watch it when it premiered or?
I watched it actually in the fall after it premiered. So it was like May
Yeah.
30th, 2021. So I actually watched it in October, November. I was actually very late getting to the game. I knew that there was the Jeffrey Bezos song I had heard before Inside, but
Yeah.
very, very briefly. I don't have a TikTok account. I know that Inside songs just blew up on TikTok.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I don't, I'm not on
but
TikTok either, but I watched compilations on
yeah,
YouTube.
exactly. The only time I see TikTok videos are literally on YouTube. That's
Yes.
it.
Yeah,
But
same.
yeah, so I was also watching it at a time when I was finishing up the first semester of my master's program,
Right.
and I was starting to struggle a little bit again with my mental health, and it just came along at a time. I kind of like I don't know, it awoke something in me. I think I said that in our interview. It just like
Hmm.
there was just like it felt like something had been. It's weird to say this, but it seemed like I'd been asleep for the past couple of years,
I think
maybe
we
like
all were.
creatively. Yeah, like
I
creatively.
think the trauma of 2020 was never really
Hmm.
addressed. We were just kind of like pushing past and just being like, we
That's
just gotta
right.
get through another day. We just gotta get through another day. And
That's
then
right.
like since people are getting vaccinated and Biden was elected,
Yeah.
it just felt more optimistic. We were like, it's
Hmm.
almost over. Let's look back at that year.
That's right.
And I think it
Yeah.
was perfectly timed.
I
Like,
think
I don't
so.
know
Yeah.
how he could have timed it better,
Yeah,
really.
honestly. Yeah, because it came out at just the right time. We were at that point like
It was
a
before like Delta and stuff. So there was
yeah,
an Omicron and all that, but
yeah.
it was like, it felt like COVID was almost over.
That's
So,
right. Well, and also I think like with all great works of art, it's like it's a timing and it's obviously the work itself. And so it's like
oh,
if you have Inside come out even like a few years previous, I don't think it would have the same. I think it would do well, but I don't think it would have the same quite the same impact. And
definitely.
I think that that's I think that that's and I think about this sometimes too. It like crosses my mind. I'm like, I would love to see what he's gonna do next. Like I'll obviously watch anything that he does next, but it's like that's like
Obviously.
his yeah, like that's his but that's his like magnum opus. That's like his masterpiece. Like it's like
Mm,
I'm like, oh
for
my
sure.
goodness, like he must have so much pressure. He must feel like he has to top it, but it's like I don't know. He doesn't have to top it. He like created a beautifully put together. And I agree. I think of it more. I refer to it a lot as a comedy special in academic writings and so forth because
Yeah.
that's the touted genre. But I also say in my academic writing that it very much transcends the genre of a comedy special. And I honestly think
Mm.
it's like if you divide it in two halves, like the first half is a bit more funny, but
Oh,
then
yeah.
right like once you hit look who's inside again when he stops singing those songs about because the majority of the songs in the first half are about internet culture and so forth.
Yes.
But then the last half of the film very much is about his personal life, or at least the representation of his personal life that he wants to present to us,
Yeah.
and
And
seeing
I
that
just want to
shift.
reiterate that we don't know
No,
specifically if this is what Bo went through. It is a performance. People sometimes see it as a documentary, and that's just not accurate.
no.
That's
People
not what
are
Bo does at all.
no,
He's
no,
not a documentarian.
no. And that's one of the things that's so I don't know if you've seen this recent video essay. It was posted on Reddit about it was called Bo Burnham's Inside an Autofiction, and it was talking about it was comparing it to this other film called from the 60s called David Holschman's Diary and
I'm
how
actually sorry. I'm
yeah.
actually interviewing those guys who
Oh
created it.
great.
So
I
it'll be
can't wait to
coming
read
out
that.
at
Yeah.
some point. But yes, I did watch that. I loved it.
Yeah,
It was
I
great.
thought that was a really interesting take. It was a fresh
It was
take on,
fascinating.
yeah,
Hmm.
on Inside that I think wasn't really addressed because there's been so many. So, and, I mean, including I made a video on Inside. There's been so many little videos on Inside. So it's like, it's it's great to, and that's what scholarship is. It's breaking new ground on things that people are interested in and want to know about. So what so beside I would so I guess like moving on to just this the next question I have for you. How did you first discover the genre, the medium of stand-up comedy?
Right. So, like I said, I was always into comedy shows. Simpsons
Mm-hmm.
um,
Uh,
was my first favorite thing. I would read the episode guide. I got the first episode guide that came out for The Simpsons, and I
yeah.
read it cover to cover so many times it fell apart, and I had to buy another one. I love memorizing stuff too. So one of my favorite
Yeah.
things is memorizing random pop culture facts and just sort of like spouting them out at people to sound intelligent.
Yeah. I do the same thing.
I just know a lot of random stuff. And so The Simpsons was like my first foray when I was 7, like to into subversive humor. And I loved it. It's always been one of my favorite things. Um, and I love meta humor too. I was actually thinking about one of the first books I read that was very meta was The Stinky Cheese Man. Did you ever?
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. I remember that
Yeah.
from as a
So
kid.
it was this book that's just sort of taking apart the concept of a book. There's like table of contents that are falling from the sky, and it was just
Yeah.
fascinating to me because I love words. I'm kind of a word nerd. That's always like a hashtag I'll use for myself.
Hmm.
I'm an English major. I have a master's in English from Villanova University, and
Yes.
I love the English language. I love studying it, the intricacies of it, and I love wordplay, which is really the thing that Bo does that I love the
Yeah.
most is his
Yeah.
wordplay. And I know he doesn't do it as much as he used to, but wow, like words, words, words. I
Oh
had to
my
like sit
goodness. Yeah.
and like go through every single line on genius.com and be like, oh my God, how did I miss this? Oh, I missed that too. Oh,
Yeah.
the cider joke.
So many
Now I get it.
levels.
It's like
Yeah.
there's so much. It's so dense
Yeah.
that I
So dense.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I think some people don't like that, but I've always loved dense,
Hmm.
complex things that I can take apart and analyze. Like one of my favorite shows was Arrested Development. I don't know if you
Hmm.
ever watched that
Yeah.
by Mitch Hurwitz. And like I was obsessed with that. And I loved how he would have instead of just callbacks, there'd be call forwards. There'd be things that you wouldn't know until later on in the series. And then you'd go back and you'd be like, oh, that's what that meant.
I love that. Yeah.
That I love that stuff too.
I think
So
it's so smart because it communicates that you're in good hands as like a viewer, a reader, someone who is consuming the art because it's
yeah,
like the artist has put a lot of thought into what they have created. And I
yeah,
think it's always really exciting because you're like, wow, this artist is really paying attention. And the same thing we were talking just before we started recording about the show Mad Men. I've even been noticing that there are things set up early on in Mad Men that then pay off later on, and even like
right.
little subtle things where you're like, oh my goodness, yeah, like this character had this happen, and then in season 5 this happens to them, and it's connected to that. And so I love and I think and Bo does that really well too, where you have the last shot of Make Happy is him walking out of the guest house, and then inside
Right.
he walks back in
So in the fandom, we call that the room. The room. I
the
don't know how to
room.
pronounce it.
Yeah,
I'm not from Boston like Bo, but it's like rum. Really, is how he
yeah,
pronounces it. He says rum,
yeah.
and uh, so that actually appears initially in the trailer for What. So you can connect all of his
Oh,
specials
yeah.
to that
To
one
that room.
location,
Yeah,
except for Words, Words, Words. But Words, Words, Words
right.
is kind of like its own thing. It was
It
like
is.
Comedy
Yeah.
Central. It doesn't really fit in with the Bo universe as
No,
well.
not quite. No, and certainly if you even look at you compare the lighting design on Words
Oh
to
yeah,
What, like it's very,
yeah.
very different. I think even like tonally too. I would actually have to say that Words is probably my least favorite of his comedy specials
Mm,
generally. I still very much appreciate it, but I think compared to you can see like his progression. You can see each one is just better than the last one. Like you can
Exactly.
really see his progression. And I know he's
And
talked
that's
about
why
that a
it's so
lot.
funny when I watched his specials, I watched them the opposite way. So I
Yeah,
wasn't going forward, I was going backwards. So he was getting worse,
he's getting
worse.
worse. Yeah,
He's
yeah. In
still
this,
amazing.
yeah.
But like words, as a person who loves the English language, it's actually one of my favorite specials because like
Mhm.
he has the entire script behind him.
Behind him. Yeah,
You can read everything he's going to say.
that's right.
That's so clever and
Yeah,
fascinating to me. As like,
yeah.
could you imagine being in the audience and just being like, what are those giant
What's
things? And then
happening? Then it suddenly occurs to you to read it, and you start reading it. You're like, wait a minute, he
like,
said that
wait,
earlier.
those are good. Oh my
This
God.
is the
I can't
script
even
to his
imagine.
show. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
anyway, as you were saying about stand-up comedy, specifically,
mhm,
there are two factors that really made me obsessed with stand-up comedy.
mhm,
And one was that we got Comedy Central in 1999 uh, through our cable. My
mhm.
parents are very, very cheap. They would not pay for extra channels. So only once it was available could we watch it. And I would watch all of the shows. It was like comedy all the time. I love comedy, so I would just watch like Kids in the Hall and Dr. Katz and Upright Citizens Brigade was one of my favorite shows. Strangers with Candy. I adored Strangers with Candy. And South Park is one of my favorite things ever. It's actually the first conversation I had with my husband when we met was about South Park, the movie.
Wow.
And he was surprised that I liked it so much, as a girl. And I was like, no, I loved it. And
Yeah,
then we talked about like The Simpsons and Futurama and stuff. But
yeah.
we're both big pop culture nerds.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
yeah. And so from there, one of the things that I like watched every week was Comedy Central Presents, which was just this sort of showcase that Comedy Central would have where they would have a comedian on stage doing a 30-minute set, for a crowd, and then they'd record it.
Mhm.
And have you seen Bo's Comedy Central
Yeah, I
Presents?
have. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's like that format.
right.
One of the things I actually think I'm going to do for my website is just like do a screenshot of some of these because they have the weirdest backdrops. I don't know who the set designer was for Comedy Central Presents, but Bo's is like his bedroom. There's
Yeah,
a female comedian named Judy Gold, and hers is just a giant safe behind her,
that's
like
a
a
bit
gold
strange.
safe.
Hmm.
I don't know what I remember. Jim Gaffigan's was a cornfield behind him.
They just get weirder and weirder.
So bizarre. But
Yeah.
um, but that is where I really started learning about stand-up comedy. I remember seeing Maria Bamford's first
Wow.
Comedy Central Presents and just adoring her. Mitch Hedberg, I loved. Uh, who else? Dave Attell. Um, Wanda Sykes was the first one. I think she was the first
Wow.
episode ever, and I did watch that. And
Wow.
yeah, that really introduced me to stand-up comedy. And then when I went to college in 2001, I um, I went to Lafayette College, which is in Easton, Pennsylvania. It's
Mhm.
where my husband and I met. We both went there. Um, and they would have these comedy nights at our little like student activity center where like a comedian would show up. I guess they would do
Wow.
like college tours.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I saw Bill Burr when he still had hair, and
Oh
I
my
saw
goodness.
I saw Mike Britt. I don't know if you know Mike Britt, but did you ever see the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt
I've
show?
actually never seen that, but I really need to. He's in it?
Okay. Well, he's
Yeah.
he's in it. He's in the first episode, and then he's always in the theme song. He's the guy who says it's a miracle. And
Ah.
I knew him before from Best Week Ever. Like I love VH1's pop culture shows. I watch them obsessively.
Mhm.
Pop-up video was one of my favorite things ever. I wish someone would do that again. Did you ever see pop-up video?
No, I don't think so. I think that might have been before my time, actually.
Okay, it was like
Yeah.
they would show a music video and then there'd be little facts that would pop up about what you were
Oh,
seeing on
yes, yes.
screen.
I think I saw that for a lot of Katy Perry music videos. I think back in
Yeah.
like 2010. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I do recall that.
It was the best. I'm as a person who loves trivia and pop
Yeah,
culture, I was obsessed
yeah.
with pop-up video. I actually had a board game for pop-up video. It's probably still at my parents'
That's
house.
so cool.
Yeah.
I would have been into that too. Yeah, the it's like almost like watching a music video with an audio commentary track, but the song isn't being
Right.
interrupted. Yeah. They kind of do a
Yeah.
similar thing now on Spotify where you can learn sometimes there's like a or there I don't know if they still have it on Spotify, but I have a memory of there being a little section where you can read info about the song. I think particularly
Yeah.
famous songs like stuff by, the Beatles and artists like that and so forth and Taylor Swift.
Right. And
Um
Amazon has X-Ray, which is kind of similar, where it has like little facts that you can read about the
yeah.
songs, or
Yeah.
but it's not exactly the same because these were like
Mhm.
little superimposed pop. They would go pop, and then yeah,
Nice.
you would see
Yeah.
it show up. Um, I loved that show. So best week ever. Did you ever have you ever heard of I Love the 80s at all?
Sounds
It was
very
it was a
familiar.
it was another program. This is also how I learned about like New York comedians, really,
Hmm.
because a lot of like the alternative comedians would do gigs basically with VH1. They just show up, be a talking head, talk about some pop culture thing. I guess they get some amount of money for it, and that was a
Yeah.
way to supplement their comedy. But so like I that was the first time I saw like Paul F. Tompkins and Nick Kroll, and yeah, just like lots
Wow.
of famous comedians. Paul Shear, I think that's where I first saw him on
My
too.
goodness. I
And
mean, no wonder you started stand-up comedy historian. You really, truly are a stand-up comedy historian. My goodness. No, I'm super impressed with the repertoire of people that you've seen. I've only ever
yeah,
been to a handful of comedy shows. It's very impressive. You saw Bill Burr when he still had hair. Like that
yes.
alone is
And
great.
he told a girl in the crowd who would not like stop talking on her phone. He's like, "Shove it up your ass!" We were all laughing hysterically. It was
Classic
great.
Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was Bill, dealing with the yeah. Oh, it was great. Um, so yeah, that really just seeing like comedians in person, I was like,
Hmm.
this is such a cool form of expression. I just loved it. And when I had an internship at Oxford University Press, I was working on, it was called the Historical Dictionary of American Slang. This has never been published
Wow. Wow.
because, dictionaries kind of aren't being
Uh,
published anymore. No one buys them anymore.
Not
So
really.
at the time in 2004, there was still a hope that this would be published. But what I worked on were citations. I looked up the slang terms. I would find examples in like newspapers and magazines and things like that, and then collects them for them so that they would have these different citations that they could use
Wow.
for the eventual published version, which never came out. But
That's a shame.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
But I
too
did
bad.
do a couple other things. I proofread a thesaurus, Oxford American Writers Thesaurus. I proofread, and that was fun. And I met a really fascinating lexicographer named Erin McKeon, and she was sort of like my mentor. She's
Wow.
awesome, and uh, I really wanted to be a lexicographer at the time. I was like, I love dictionaries. It's what I wrote my master's thesis about.
Yeah.
And I also actually wrote my honors thesis in college about a professor named Francis Andrew March. And he worked with the with the Oxford English Dictionary. He was an
Hmm.
American correspondent who would send them citations to James Murray at the time. And um, so I would sorry, I lost track of what I was saying.
No, no worries.
Um, so Francis Andrew March was a professor at my school, and this internship that I took was called the Francis Andrew March intern for Oxford University Press. It was the first one that they ever had. I was the inaugural one or whatever.
Hmm.
And so I had this opportunity to be in New York City for a summer, and I was able to stay at a new school um, in their dorms. And from there, I had easy access to like all these comedy clubs that I only ever heard of.
Wow.
So mm, at the time, my boyfriend, now my husband, uh, he would like come up and see me on the weekend. We would go to shows at like Upright Citizens Brigade and other venues. And it was just so much fun.
Wow.
I got to see Matt Besser, who's one of the founders. I got to see Dimitri Martin actually perform. I was obsessed with Dimitri Martin. I saw his Comedy Central Presents, and he was my favorite comedian at that time. I
Wow.
still have his CD, These Are Jokes. Uh, and he's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And again, wordplay. He's really big on words. He would do like palindromes and just really, really witty stuff that a lot of people would find too intellectual for them, I guess. But I love intellectual comedy. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Um, so I got to see Dimitri Martin live in 2004, and I actually saw him skateboard by when we were waiting in line. I was like, that looked like Dimitri. I
And oh my goodness, it probably was.
think it was.
Yeah.
And so his performance of it was called Spiral Bound, I'm sorry. He really incorporated sadness into his comedy in a way I had never seen before. Most comedians that I saw in Comedy Central Presents were just like, here's a joke, here's a joke, here's a joke. I
Yeah.
was like, I mean, I like jokes, but this was like something entirely different. He was
Mhm.
talking about his divorce, and I didn't even know he was married. And I was a huge fan. I was like, what? But I remember afterwards thinking, like, it wasn't the funniest thing I ever saw, but it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that that was the first time I saw someone incorporate sadness into comedy, and it really deepens the performance. And
Mhm.
one of the
Yeah.
things about if you have a sad element to your show is that then the audience is starved for laughter. They're just like, please, please say something funny so we can
Yeah.
get out of this
Mhm. Yeah.
dark place. So it can actually make stuff funnier. It's really fascinating, I think,
I never thought
comedy.
of that before, but that's so true. Yeah, you're right. Because if,
Oh, you were so
yeah,
starved.
yeah,
You
you're so
just
starved for
want
laughter.
to, you
You just want to
want to
exhale.
laugh.
Yeah, yeah. You want to take a
Exactly.
breath. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness. That kind of
So
leads me to, sorry, yeah, sorry to interrupt. That leads me to
no, it's fine.
just like the next sort of question I had for you.
Sure.
Just in terms of your do you have a favorite? I mean, you kind of mentioned this already, but do you have a favorite comedy special or comedy film that's kind of a go-to?
Okay, so for comedy special, like I said, I don't consider Inside a special necessarily,
Yeah.
so that would be my favorite comedy film.
Yeah.
But for comedy special, it would definitely be Make Happy. I've
Definitely make
watched
happy.
it so many times. So many times. I would watch it like pretty much every 2 weeks from 2019 to 2021 when Inside came out, and I switched to that.
Wow. Yeah, of course. And then now we have the outtakes, so it's even great.
I
Inside of
love
the
the outtakes.
It's so hard to not watch the outtakes right after watching Inside. I mean, Netflix sets it up. It sets it up for you, just like
I
on
know. You
autoplay.
could just
Yeah,
watch it on a loop forever.
yeah. Like
And
it's
I've
like
done
what?
that a couple
Yeah,
times where I've watched it for like maybe 3 hours at night or
just on
something
a
and just
loop.
like watching
Yeah,
it again and again.
yeah.
It's fun to watch them bleed into each other.
That's right.
Um,
Because
you,
they're both pretty different too. I mean, like
they are.
in
They
their own
are.
way, like they both have different. I mean, I would say Inside has its own. Inside definitely has its own thing and tone going on, and then the outtakes are a
Mm-hmm.
bit more. I would say the outtakes are a bit more sort of more of
Silly?
his silly and like more of his more of him trying to be like outwardly like funny. And there's so many
Yes.
bits that I think he could have included. But I also
Oh yeah.
I think Inside is virtually
I really
perfect.
wish he had added the dump. I think that that was
That would have
phenomenal.
been
I'm
hilarious.
glad that he included it in the outtakes. I'm glad we
Yeah,
finally saw it. If that had
exactly.
sat in the dust, I would be incredibly depressed because
I know.
it's one of my favorite bits.
Can you only imagine like the amount of other things that he probably had, the amount of footage that he would have shot just over the course of
I
that year.
know.
I can only imagine, you know,
I
the
would
peanut
love
butter
to see the
sandwich.
unsent like I would love to just dive into that archival material and just like
Right? I
find
know,
out.
just hours and hours of like
I would
footage.
watch it.
Same. I would too. I would too. What's the most rewarding part of running your website, would you say, of running stand-up comedy historian?
Um, I would say the feedback from people. I love hearing like you've been so kind about it, but just like other people have just told me how much they enjoy reading like my deep dive threads, and I just really enjoy that sort of positive feedback. Uh, Another thing I like about it is I like learning. It's one of my favorite things to do. My job can be a bit boring at times, so it's a way for me to like sort of stimulate my mind, I guess. And
Hmm.
I really wanted to try to write again. It's something that I did as a kid and I did in high school and then like college, obviously for essays. But after that, I just sort of lost interest in it because I put too much pressure on myself. I was like, I can't figure out what to write. I just would have writer's block. So this sort of gave me a way to try to write again. If you read my companion piece, I have a companion piece for this interview called The History of Burnham Historian.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I started writing again, like just in a humorous way, I wanted to try to do more comedy again, um, was I started a parody Rocco account on Twitter where I would put, did you ever see Rocco's Modern Life?
I've seen a few episodes, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like one of the things that the Wallaby would say is like, something is a very dangerous day. So he would say, like, laundry day is a very dangerous day. And
Hmm.
I told my husband, I was like, wouldn't it be funny if someone did like an account where they would just put that and then the blank would be whatever garbage, trashy, I don't know, just the
Yeah.
stupid
Yeah.
fake holidays that everyone celebrates for no reason, like it's National Hamburger Day, come get your
Yeah.
hamburger,
That's
that
right.
like didn't exist before social media. No one
Yeah.
cared about
No.
any of this stuff, but now we like have to have something every day. So I was like, why don't I try this? So I created an account called Rocco's Thoughts,
That's great.
and I I would just put whatever stupid national holiday it was, that day is a very dangerous day, and that was it. That was all I would do, and I would do
That's really
that every
smart.
morning in 2019, every morning, every day. And then I would start adding like hashtags, and I started adding pictures. I learned how to add GIFs to Twitter. I didn't know how to do that before. Um, so I started doing that and I got a pretty good response. I had like 23 followers by the end, but I just completely dumped the whole thing. I didn't want to do it anymore. And then, yeah, because of Inside, I kind of took up writing again. And now I have my website.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
it
I'm
does.
expanding it. It's not just going to be about Bo anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a very, very well put together website. You have
Oh, thank you.
such an impressive amount of cool articles. And you also write really well, as
Oh,
well.
that's really sweet of
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
of
I
course.
I try to be comedic and like um just sort of like conversational. I don't want it to
Hmm.
be too formal.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
so yeah.
That's great. What would you say is the most difficult aspect of running your website? If you
Uh
if you care to
it's
share.
not I don't make any money from it.
Mm,
So I have to pay for the website, I have to pay for shows that I attend, and those can be very
mhm.
expensive, especially when I saw Kate 3 times.
Yes.
Um, Especially the winter encore one where the prices went up. They were like triple the price of what they
Oh
were
my
the
goodness.
previous
Wow.
time. Yeah, because it was such a success, they could
Of
raise the
course.
prices.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that if anyone wants, I have a category that says stuff to buy,
Hmm.
And if you click on a link in any of those articles, you can buy stuff from Amazon and I can get a referral and that'll help
Yeah.
me.
We'll link that. We'll also link that below in the description.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll be sure to do
Um,
that.
but yeah, that, and then one of the reasons I switched from being the Bo Burnham historian to the stand-up comedy historian is because I just couldn't think of any more topics. I kind of
Mhm.
the well ran dry. I didn't really have anything else I wanted to do with Bo. I've
Mm.
done so much over the past year that unless he puts out something new, I'm probably going to, focus on other comedians who are doing stuff.
For
Like
sure.
John Mulaney just did an amazing interview with Hollywood Reporter that I want to write about because it
Mhm.
was just really cool. And yeah, did you want to hear my top five comedians? I was just
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I completely missed that. Yeah.
No,
Tell me
it's
your top five
fine.
comedians.
Okay, so number one, Bo.
Of
Definitely.
course.
Bo Burnham. I've seen him 4 times in person. I've never seen him perform. Not once, not
Wow.
ever. I've only seen him direct.
That's very cool though.
It's funny because like before that, yeah,
Yeah.
you could see him all over the place.
All over the place.
The thing that bothered me the most is that when I became a fan, I started looking at like his old stuff and I was like, last year he was everywhere promoting eighth
Everywhere.
grade. I
Yeah.
could have seen him in Montclair, New Jersey, but I didn't know. And
Yeah.
then he started the Make Happy tour at a venue that is literally a half hour from my house.
Oh,
So,
that's
and
so
I've been there
frustrating.
twice. So I was like, oh, if only, but I was pregnant at the time, it wouldn't have worked.
Fair.
I wouldn't want to be like hugely pregnant. No, that
At
wouldn't be
at a
good.
comedy show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Who's
so
number
yeah,
two?
Bo's number one. Two is James A. Caster. I saw James A. Caster in November for the Heckler's Welcome Tour. It was so much fun. I went with my friend Nicole, and it was just a blast. He let us take pictures. We could take video. We could do anything with our phones during it. So I like took pictures and
That's
stuff, which is
great.
really fun because all
Yeah.
the other comedy shows I've been to, they're putting them in the little pouches. I
Right.
saw
Yeah.
John Mulaney in 2021 and he had the pouches. Gerard Carmichael always has the pouches.
Yeah.
So I it was just fun to be able to actually get a picture of a comedian where they're not mad at me.
Totally. Yeah. Nice to be able to film.
But that was great. If have you seen James A. Caster?
I haven't, no, but I've heard he's really funny.
You need to.
Yeah.
If you love Bo, you will love James A. Caster. He is the British Bo Burnham, in my opinion. He
Wow. I
does
definitely have to check him out.
incredible stuff with his sets. He will have his microphone stand matching his clothes.
Oh, nice.
It's there's so much effort put into everything he does that it's
Yeah.
just you can start with Repertoire, which is on Netflix. It's
Okay,
4
great.
shows that are all intertwined.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
entirely circular. You could start it all over from the end to the beginning and it would make perfect sense.
Wow, that's great. I'll definitely have to check
It's
that out.
it's so good. And then his most recent special was Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself 1999, which was up for an award against Inside. Inside
Really?
won. That
Mm,
was for the Critics' Choice Awards.
right.
But you have to pay for that one. It's on Vimeo. It's
Mm.
well worth the money. It's
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. And that one, I consider James, like I said, to be an equivalent. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My Roomba's talking. I don't know if you can hear that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I can't hear it at all. That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Don't
Okay,
worry.
so Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself, 1999. I consider James's Make Happy. It's about
Mm,
mental health. It's
right.
about struggling with the audience, like the performer audience relationship.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just really very similar in some ways to Make
Yeah.
Happy. And then I consider Repertoire to be his what, which is like just sort of all over the place, he's doing all kinds of things, trying out different stuff. It's really fun. I
Yeah.
love James A. Caster. He's great. Um, and then my third is John Mulaney, who
Hmm.
I saw. I loved him since like 2018, or I think it was 2018, or maybe it's 2019. I love the Sack Lunch Bunch. That is something that only people my age would really understand. I know that
Mm.
sounds pretentious,
No, not at
but
all.
Mulaney and I are almost the exact same age. He
Hmm.
is 1 month younger than me. So
Wow.
we're both 40, and we're both going to turn 41 soon. So um and he this special was basically like a parody of shows that I would watch on PBS as a kid.
Wow.
It's so brilliant that I loved it. And I love like Kid Gorgeous.
Hmm.
New in Town is one of my favorites. The Comeback Kid. They're all great. Actually, Bo tweeted about the Comeback Kid, which is very rare. Bo's not big on tweeting, but he did say
No.
that he loved that special.
Wow.
And so Mulaney, I saw him perform from scratch in 2021. It was his thing about rehab and all that.
Right. Hmm.
Uh, Excellent. It turned into Baby J, which I really do think is going to be nominated for an Emmy soon. Um, I do expect that.
Is that his most
Uh,
recent one?
that is his most recent one. It came out
Right.
yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been hearing good things about that too, actually. I
It
think my
is.
my
It's really
yeah.
great. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. I think it's very funny that it features like fake snow in the title credits. Like you can see snow falling, but it's
Yeah.
clearly it doesn't look real to me.
Clearly
Maybe it was
artificial.
snowing. Maybe. I don't know. But it reminded me of Nathaniel because, and this is just something that I only people who were there would know
Hmm.
because I was lucky enough to attend the taping
Oh, the
of
taping.
Nathaniel.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yes, you can hear my laugh in the special, and I go woo at one point.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That's
It was
amazing.
like a life changing. It was one of the best things that has ever happened to me.
Yeah.
That was also the first night I met Bo. But
Wow. And seeing him direct too. That's almost as good as seeing him perform.
yes, I've
Yeah.
seen him direct 4 times.
Wow.
Um, and so at Nathaniel, there was this lot, so we could hear Bo talking to us over like an overhead, like a speaker thing,
Yeah.
and I didn't recognize his voice at first. I was with my friend Kinja, that I met at the screening of Inside in July of 2021. We became really good friends,
Mhm.
and I invited her to go with me to see Nathaniel because I won a lottery for 2 tickets. I put in my name and I won the 2 tickets to attend. So we went to the show. That's actually how I met Nicole for the first time. She had won a ticket as well at an earlier not screening, earlier show, an earlier taping, really. There were 4 tapings in total. And so we were there on the same day. So I met Nicole for the first time, which was really cool, and in line. And then we went in. It was my first time at any sort of filmed anything.
Yeah.
So I was like staring at all the cameras and stuff. And Kendra was making fun of me because I'm kind of a very naive and like, what's that? What's that? What's that? I, because I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
but it was so funny because when we walked in, it was like dense, so dense with fog, like you could just
Wow.
feel it, and the lights were all blue, and I was like, oh, who's directing this?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. A blue light and fog.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
We could see him outside, but I was like, I think that's him, but I'm not sure. Every
Hmm.
time I've seen Bo in person, it takes me 2 minutes to figure out if that is actually him or not, because he is very, very just like some dude kind of guy. He doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't present himself as a star in any
No.
way.
Very,
You would
very
not
low
know
key
he's a
guy.
celebrity at all,
Yeah.
except you'll see people come up to him. Um, so at this show, over the speaker, he was like talking to us, like saying, uh, uh, the show's going to be starting soon. Sorry for the delay. It was delayed like an hour. We were
Mm,
waiting because of some sort of technical difficulty, I guess.
right.
And we we went. So we were sitting in. I mean, this is like the middle of the pandemic. We have our masks on and stuff. We're in this tiny, tiny jazz club,
Hmm.
packed with people. I was at a table that usually sits four. It was like six people there, so it was
Goodness.
really packed. And we were like, Kinch and I were like, "Oh God, we're gonna get COVID." And actually, Bo got COVID
Really?
during that taping. Yes,
Well, no wonder.
yeah, he looked exhausted when I saw him.
Uh,
Um, so we could hear him talking, and I thought it was just like a manager of the location, the Blue
mhm.
Notes. And then Kinja was like, "That was Bo." I was like, "What?"
Can I
I
hear it again?
I know. I like practically fell over on top of her. I was like, "No way!" And it was just so crazy. But so the thing I wanted to bring back about the snow is that we heard Bo say over the speaker something about like CGIing some snowflakes and shit. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. Sure. But I wrote it down afterwards as something that he said, because I was like trying to remember everything that happened.
Yeah.
And then when Nathaniel, premiered on April Fool's Day of 2022, I saw the snow and I was like, oh, okay. This is what he was
Uh,
referring to, because it was not snowing when we were there at all.
CGI some snowing.
It was completely there.
Yeah, that's
So
so the things they can do nowadays in editing in
it's
post-production,
it's crazy. You would think it was
endless.
snowing. It was snowing earlier in the week, and I think they
Mm,
filmed that and then
yeah,
edited it together.
yeah.
But it was not snowing during the performance. So
Wow.
for anyone who thought it was snowing during Nathaniel,
Sorry
no.
to break it to you.
Sorry to break it to you, Hollywood magic.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so funny that there was this again fake snow in a comedy special. I was like, oh, he seems to have ripped that off from Nathaniel.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, literally. Quite literally. One
But
of
yeah, that was great.
you've actually like just from our conversation, you've actually covered all the questions I had for you, except for this one.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry. I needed to do my number 4 and 5
yeah,
still.
sorry. No, my apologies. Continue, continue. Yeah.
No problem. So 3 was Mulaney.
Yeah, who's number
Um,
four?
4 is Flight of the Conchords. I saw them
Of
live
course.
in 2008 at Town Hall in New York, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
And then I saw them in 2016, a couple months after I gave birth to my son. I was like, I have to see this. I
Hmm.
don't care if I'm nursing right now. I need to go to this. So I I went to that. It was so great. It was actually in Philly. Well, it
Wow.
was at the Mann Center, not the Mann Center, I think, in
Hmm.
Philadelphia, and it was just incredible. Brett and Jermaine are two of my favorite people. I've followed
Hmm.
their careers forever. I love What We Do in the Shadows. I love Wellington Paranormal. Just like anything associated with those guys, I will watch.
Hmm.
And of course, Brett won an Academy Award, which is
Really?
amazing. Yes,
Wow.
he won an Academy Award for the song from the Muppets movie.
Oh, I didn't even know that he had written one for the Muppets movie. Wow.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah,
him. Yeah.
Man or Muppet. Yeah, so he that was like incredible. So yeah, I love Flight of the Concords. That was when I read that interview where Bo was saying how much he likes Flight of the Concords. I was like, yep, same here. I
Hmm.
love musical comedy. There's
Yeah.
so many people who dismiss it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So
I've
true.
always loved it. When I was a child, I loved Weird Al. Um,
Hmm.
Weird Al Yankovic was an obsession of mine. He was huge at the time. Like
Hmm.
Amish Paradise was enormous when I was a kid. Um,
Like a
yeah, like his
surgeon.
like
Oh,
a
these
surgeon.
songs. Yeah.
They're also clever.
They're also
And I used to
clever.
watch a thing on MTV called Al TV that was like him doing interviews with people, but it was like edited so that it looked like he was talking to like Madonna or something. You know,
That's
sort of
really
like the way
funny.
that the Daily Show does interviews, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And it was I've always loved Weird Al.
Yeah.
And um so I love musical comedy. Like it's just one of my favorite things. And I've never understood people who
I know.
see it as like not comedic or a prop.
Yeah,
I don't know.
some people I've heard people refer to it as like gimmicky or
Yeah,
like this person's not actually funny, so they have to resort to musical comedy, which I think musical comedy takes a lot of cleverness and
absolutely.
natural humor and musical talent to really do it well. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, I agree with you. I never understood that why musical comedians get so dismissed and so maligned, like in the industry.
Right.
But I mean, it's people like Bo Burnham and Weird Al who, you know, are the ones that certainly make it easier for other musical comedians. So
Yeah, they've actually performed together.
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. And um so yeah, they were at Just for Laughs.
Oh yeah.
Weird Al actually introduced Bo on stage.
That's great. That's perfect.
I found that in a video. I thought it was just a Bo Burnham, video.
Yeah.
And and then I was like, wait, that's Weird Al introducing him. It's just like some person's random Just for Laughs. It had like 1,000 views or something,
Oh my
like not that
goodness.
much.
Yeah.
And it was really it was crazy.
Yeah.
I Yeah, it was like such a neat discovery. So I like added it to my I have a number of articles about some comedian and Bo,
Hmm.
like their friendship.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Also really smart.
I just think
Yeah.
that's fun. I
Yeah.
love learning about stuff like that.
Yeah. All the
So
connections.
yeah, Flight of the Conchords is definitely my number four, and then number five's Dimitri.
Yes, of course.
I saw him again in 2020, right before the pandemic. Actually, it was like
Uh, s-
February.
wow. Oh, wow. So that would have been the last comedy show that you went to before and all
Yeah,
hell broke loose? Yeah.
all hell broke loose. Exactly, and it's
I
so
really did.
funny because I'm sure you know from inside. Obviously, Bo says that he that he the funniest thing happened, but also that he's planning to perform again, and
Yeah.
he literally had a show that was going to be at the Largo in April of
Mhm.
2020 when his movie premiered. It was supposed to premiere that
Right.
month,
Promising young woman.
Promising Young
Yeah.
Woman. And so he was going to do a show at the Largo, and it was actually called Bo Burnham and Friends. Like this,
Hmm.
he had not done anything like that since Make Happy.
Yeah.
Um, he'd done a couple shows at the Largo, but always unannounced.
Yeah.
Like he would just show up. People would be like, "Oh, I saw Bo there." It's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Because it's not
Um,
the Largo, my understanding, isn't it? It's like a place for the comedians to try out new
yeah,
material.
yeah,
Okay. That
exactly.
makes sense
It's
then.
like like trying out their
Excuse me.
routines. They don't. There's no recording.
Right.
No photography. It's very much like a safe space for comedians to just sort of try out stuff
Yeah.
and see what works. Um, and I would say that UCB was kind of like that too.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of venues like that, but I digress. The So he was planning to do this show, and then COVID.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't I wonder what it would have been like. Do you
I'm
think that
really,
he could have?
yeah.
I'd hoped that he was going to tour after that. Like, oh, I like being on stage again.
Yeah, exactly. I always wonder like how much of the material from inside was written with doing it on stage in mind. I feel like there are definitely I mean if you look at the whiteboard that you see a lot in the outtakes and you see the
Yes.
structure that he had planned out, it
Yes.
seems like from like the last like quarter of the special from like shit to goodbye. I mean
Hmm.
goodbye was always on the board, but like shit, welcome to the internet, that funny feeling, and all eyes on
Yeah.
me. Those were all written like later on, like
Yeah.
definitely while he was making it. But I always assumed that songs like How the World Works, I could see that having like maybe that potentially a song that he had set up to perform on stage, like a song like that,
Yeah. And like White
you
Women's
know,
Instagram easily could have been done in like
easily.
2018.
Yeah, even comedy, I think he could have done that on stage. I mean, comedy though was certainly I don't know if that one was really written prior to the pandemic. I feel like that one was probably written with the pandemic in mind. But yeah, I'm always
I'd
curious, like
say so.
what would he have done? What would he have done if things had been different? And it seems like he probably would have gone back on stage and but I mean maybe he would have hated it. Maybe he would have been like,
Yeah. Who
no,
knows?
this
I'm
I
still not
left
ready for this.
still
Yeah.
not ready for this. I left this for a reason, because like he hadn't done any like I didn't realize until after watching Inside how much of a hiatus that he had because Make Happy it was like filmed in 2015, released in 2016,
Exactly.
and then I know he did Eighth Grade and he did some
Right.
other projects. I know he
Hmm.
directed some stuff too. He directed some Chris Rock specials, so it
He
wasn't like
directed he directed Tambourine.
that's
That
the
was
one.
he was working on eighth grade.
Yeah.
And he directed Gerard Carmichael's Eight.
Ah, yeah. So there you go. And I know that he he had one like what 2022 it came out that was supposed to come out in 2020 but got delayed. He directed
That was
some
Kate
other
Berland's special. It's called
that
Cinnamon in the Wind.
Cinnamon in the
Um,
Wind. Yeah, yeah.
it was filmed in 2019 and then
Ah,
came out
not
last year in the fall. Hmm.
quite a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He posted a thing on Instagram about how it took
yeah,
3 years, and because the entertainment industry is really cool or something
yeah.
like
Because whenever he posts on social media, I'm sure you can relate to this. I get really excited because I'm like, if he's posting on social media, like he's being very picky about what he posts and like what he's posting. It must be something important. Yeah, I think he does social media very well.
He's always funny on it. Even
He
like,
is, even when he's being like a bit cynical, like when you can, like
yeah,
even when he's being cynical, like when the last tweet
I
he
loved
posted,
his last it wasn't his last tweet. It was he had a tweet prior to the Inside Outtakes coming out. That was that he hates Twitter, and it should burn, this app should burn in
"May
hell.
this app burn in hell." Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
may
that's
this
yeah,
app burn in hell.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
I
May
loved
this
that.
app burn in hell. Um, my very this has been a great conversation. My very last
Yeah.
question for you is do you think how do you think comedy is relevant in today's society, which kind of ties into a bit of both because I think that that's one of the main deep philosophical questions that he asks during comedy, which is like who gives a shit about this
Yeah.
comedy special that I'm making. There's so many more important things going on in the world, like who am
Right.
I to think that this really matters? But I think as we've seen, I mean obviously and that's a character that he's playing in the film, but I think
Mhm.
as we've seen the real world applications that and again Inside is certainly more than a comedy special, but the real world applications that I think humor has in times of suffering. And so I was just
Yeah.
wanting to hear your opinion about that. How do you think comedy relates to the things that are going on today, especially now? It's just like you would think that things would be a bit tiny bit calmer after the WHO declared that COVID was no longer a pandemic, but it just seems like there's just so much. There's still so much stuff going
Still.
on economically, socially, philosophically, psychologically. There's
Hmm.
still so many things going on. And so yeah, I was just curious about how do you think comedy fits into the world's problems, the world's issues? No
Well,
pressure at all.
I'm sure people consider it frivolous. I know there's lots of people who consider comedy just like, oh, it's just jokes. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of comedians that almost use comedy as a means to explain the world in a way that like
Hmm.
you wouldn't want to hear otherwise.
Yeah.
So rather than like listening to a lecture, it's sort of a way to, it's almost like a Trojan horse. Like, oh, I'm laughing, ha ha ha. Oh, this is really serious.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm laughing again. And then you think about it later and you're like, wow, that was really, you know, like fascinating, or it really deepened the performance.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember about stand-up comedy when I first like got Comedy Central, was watching different specials and comedians that I had only ever seen on network TV.
Hmm.
So like Janine Garofalo was on the Ben Stiller show, and then I saw like her performing, um, and it was just, it's just so different. Like to see there there's such a sort of clean cut thing for network TV,
Hmm.
where
Yeah,
they have to
absolutely.
meet certain standards, and then like seeing them sort of like raw and unfiltered. That's one of the things I love about stand-up comedy is
Hmm.
it's not it's not really run by corporations. There's not like a CEO
Hmm.
standing over them saying you have to do this, you have to do that. It's
That's
it's so
right.
it's a free form of expression, and I think people like Bo see it as a means to explain the world, it's sort of their observations,
Yeah.
like I don't know, it's something about the way he will explain things. It just opens my mind in a way, and I'm like, wow, I never saw it from that perspective, but
Hmm.
it's totally right. I remember watching him discuss, I mean, this was before Inside came out. I remember watching him discuss in the Child Mind Institute thing that's since gone viral.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but at the time, I was like one of the only people, looking at every interview that Bo had done. And him talking about social media that way, about how you have a choice between everything in the world or oblivion when you go to bed, and that you're hovering over yourself, watching
Yeah.
yourself live your
Yeah.
life. I was like, oh my
So
god,
true.
it's so true, and I never saw it that way. So I think comedy is just so important in terms of making us think. I think we often can
Hmm.
get stuck in a rut, and I think that it helps expand our minds and
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
see things. I also think it's empathetic. It helps you view things from another perspective. You can I remember watching Margaret Cho. um, she had a show called All American Girl that I loved when I was a kid. And then I saw her comedy special when I was older, as a teenager, probably like in college. And it was about her show and how much pressure they put on her to lose weight. Her
Hmm.
mother would force her to throw up. She had bulimia and eating disorder,
Hmm.
and she was like, people in the press were so mean to her. They would call her Zoftig,
My
which she
goodness.
hated. And
Wow.
I never saw it from that perspective, because I just saw her as this like happy character on a
Hmm.
sitcom.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I never, it just opens your mind to things that it's hard to grasp otherwise, I think. And
Yeah.
one of the things I really loved about Inside is the social brand consultant sketch. It's
Yeah.
my favorite sketch it's
Yeah.
like my favorite bit,
Yeah.
because I work in marketing. So I've actually like read, I've read like proposals that say stuff like to affect positive social change and things. I mean, these are
That's
literally terms
hilarious.
that uh, large brands use to describe what they do. They really do think that they're helping.
Affect
And
positive social change.
yes. And it's so funny to me. That whole sketch is just brilliant. Um,
I think one of the things that I think
it's every
applies to,
point.
yeah, I think one of the things that
Especially the
applies,
racism part.
oh
That
my
kills
God,
me every
tell
time.
your customers that JP Morgan is against racism in theory.
In theory.
Yeah. There was that one line from the outtakes. It's very brief where he goes, I want to know when Dippin' Dots is going to condemn child sex trafficking.
It's so true.
It's so
It's so
true.
true. And
Yeah.
also, there's this opinion in the marketing community that Gen Z loves that stuff,
Oh
that
my
they're all
goodness.
about,
Activism. Yeah.
activism, and you have to have uh, all the causes that you work for on your, web page for
Hmm.
your brand, and or like on social media, you have to support these things and
Yep.
always show your voice because that's what Gen Z likes, and that is the demographic that advertising is focusing on right now.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I know that there's also a lot of criticisms in Gen Z about sort of that kind of cap what do they call it? Rainbow
Yeah.
capitalism. Like for
Yeah.
example, it was
Rainbow
just
capitalism during
yeah,
Pride Month,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of that's what's so interesting is that I'm not surprised that,
Or
that
like the thing in October for breast cancer
hmm.
awareness. There's always every company puts up something pink,
That's
and
right.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh wow,
exactly.
that helps. Not at
Yeah.
all.
No, and that's the thing. Performative activism, it's
Right.
and it's
Exactly.
just very and I think that's one of the points that Bo is making. It's just the shallowness of like just a
Right.
lot of these because I know that I mean, for example, after the George Floyd murder and protests, that
Mm-hmm.
suddenly all like even my parents' work, they suddenly were scrambling for like a DEI statement and
Yep.
like a and I understand like
Mine
from a
too.
yeah, and I understand from a PR perspective, I certainly understand that. And but again, it's just like I mean this is a whole other conversation, but I see these things happening and I'm like, okay, but in the grand scheme, does that really solve the problem? Like it looks like you're doing
Mm.
something, but in the grand scheme, it's like, are you though? Like are you really quite doing something? Like, but I think like
Oh, I just wanted to mention the thing
yeah,
in the dump where he talks about that there's no one on the screen who's a woman or a
yeah, he's
person
like,
of color, and
I'm looking at
I'd
this
like someone
group.
to address that. And oh my
Yeah,
god, it's so good.
we haven't
Our
done and
doing
should do
isn't
better.
done, and our dunning isn't did. So
Okay.
know that.
And he's just like, well said, really well said. No, and that's the
So
thing. Yeah,
well
it's
done.
his comedy works on so many different levels. I think with
Yes.
comedy, just like I think any other art form, especially with fiction, whether it's a film, a book, a television show, a comedy special.
Hmm.
Um, I think I don't know who said this, but always remember this quote: "Art is a lie that can tell the truth." And I think that that's the thing you hold. It's very hard to tell the truth about. It's very hard to face like the truths in our
Harsh
society,
truths.
the harsh
Yes.
truths exactly.
Hmm.
But if you put a mask
Yes.
on I think it was Oscar Wilde who said that if you put a mask on a human, a person without a mask won't tell you the truth, but you put a mask on them, they will tell you the truth. And I
Right.
think
And
that
then there was
there's
also the thing about with like the kings and their jesters,
that's right.
and or
Exactly.
the
The
clowns in like
clowns.
Shakespeare, who are they're like the truth tellers. They're the ones who tell you what's actually happening because everyone else can't.
Exactly.
And
Or where
they're
there's that
able
old
to.
yeah, like there's also that old adage about comedians of like, oh, I love this person, I love this comedian. They're telling it as it is, like
Yes.
there's that kind of there's a long
Truth to
history.
power is a big
Yeah,
thing. Right.
yeah, exactly. So I think that comedy's never going to go anywhere. And I think if
No, and it
anything,
actually, I
yeah.
just read an article the Hollywood Reporter put out because of the writer's strike here. The
Yeah.
guild is on strike,
Yes.
and a lot of people who work on like late night shows and just TV shows are going back to stand-up comedy because it's not the
Mm.
guild doesn't disallow them from doing that during that time.
Oh, right, right,
So
right.
it was just really interesting to see all these people going back to their roots, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I definitely don't see stand-up comedy going away anytime soon. It's one of the
No.
only forms of expression that isn't controlled by large conglomerates.
Yes,
like
that's very true.
like the streaming services are all failing now, and the movies are struggling, and
Yeah.
it's everything has become so, yeah, just the late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
Social
Yeah.
media is falling apart basically. It's like everything around us is collapsing, but I think stand-up comedy will survive.
Absolutely. I think it
Yeah.
thrives. It seems to thrive in any situation. And I think that
Hmm.
I mean, look at Bo, for example, like he could have easily been like, well, I can't do stand-up comedy, so I'm just not going to do anything. But instead, his character in the film like tried to bring the comedy special to his home and suffer the
Yes.
consequences as a result of that. And so I think if anything, the more difficult the times are, the more comedy, and I think art in general just really seems to thrive. So yeah, I completely 100% agree with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish things off? Anything else that you want to share? Anything you want to plug that you want to tell my YouTube audience
Um,
about?
sure.
Yeah.
I would like to plug my website, which is
Mm-hmm.
standupcomedyhistorian.com. And I also wanted to point out that I have a collaboration I did with an amazing editor. Her YouTube channel is Raven HP. Oh gosh, I can't remember it now. It's a long thing, but
You know what? You can send it to me afterwards and I can paste it down
yeah.
below
But
so people can
so
see
we
it.
made this. We've worked for over a year on taking. Did you ever see the H3 podcast that Bo did?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorite ones that he's done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you know the hot dogs and peaches guy.
Yes. Yes. When they're watching YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're watching YouTube and they're talking about this, but so many comments for it were like, "Oh, this sounds exactly like Inside," and I was like, "That's perfect." So I did a ton of like research on it. I watched a number of times. I came up with specific instances from Inside that would match what they were saying
I've seen this
because
video, I think.
oh, you have?
I
Oh,
think I have come
thank you.
across it. I'm almost
Yeah,
certain
it's
that I
called
have.
Bo Burnham Watches Inside.
Yes, I have seen it. I have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It we worked a lot on it, but
I'll
it
paste that below too for people to check out. It's
yes,
really
it's
funny. I really
really
liked it.
fun. It's really
Yeah.
fun. Because he's like talking about how it's like sad and tragic and funny and stuff.
It's just like then there's just clips of
That's
himself.
what's
Yeah.
inside.
It's
So
so
yeah,
funny when
that's what
they're
I have to plug. Oh, and also I
great.
have a Tumblr account, which is also at Stand Up Comedy Historian. If
Great.
anyone's on Tumblr, that's where I post most of my like thoughts about stand up comedy, or just like post, fan art that I found, that type of thing. So it's
Fantastic.
fun.
All those links will be posted below for people's enjoyment and for people to check out. Be sure
Great.
to visit Jessica's website,
Thank
Stand Up
you.
Comedy Historian. Check out the Tumblr. Check out all the links below. Do it. You won't regret it. Thank you
Yes,
so much
please.
for joining me today. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Clinton. This has been wonderful.
Great. Maybe we can have another conversation again at some point in the future.
Absolutely. This was a blast.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great.